Alright, time for another DraftScience video presentation. So let me reiterate that I would prefer to have interactions on the subject of science. Not interactions about this constant effort to prove somebody wrong. Showing somebody wrong is a good idea, but constantly talking about that part of it is a waste of time, and it's all Stephen Brozo wishes to do. I mean, all his videos are just some rag. So he won't just make videos on his physics theory. He won't just tell us what insights he has collected, okay, and just present those to everybody as just facts. This is an experiment I did. This is the results I got. Instead, he wastes the substance of his videos. 90% of the time is devoted to just reciting his theories about what I stole from him or some other kind of crap for which he has zero evidence. He just makes these rotten, lousy accusations. And the ironic thing is he defends people who there's actual proof of their misbehavior, like Professor Lewin. Now, I've spent almost zero time here on the internet making any big point out of it, besides just mentioning it because it's a fact. I mean, the fact is that Professor Lewin did some inappropriate things. It's a fact, okay? I didn't make it up. It's on his own Wikipedia page. And it goes, the more research you do, the more you see it was just basically covered up. But it's just a fact. It happened, Steve. Okay, so, and he's comparing these, because I just mentioned a truth, a fact. It's a statement. I mean, Professor Lewin admitted to wrongdoing, blah, 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 signed a statement, blah, blah, blah. This isn't, so anyway, there's just no point with these idiots. All right, so anyway, so where we are now is Steve has made a claim. All right, so his new claim in the last video is that the slit experiments are decided by a factor, okay, we'll call it the Brozian factor, where they would do an analysis, and then you could just change the number. So say I had a slit, it produced whatever number of light and dark fringes because there are points where there's a path length difference. But somehow that math is nonsense because frankly I just stick something else in here and I change how many path length differences there were. So I can make more or less depending on what kind of thing I poke inside the experiment. Now this is the double slit experiment, and frankly there is math that gets a pretty good answer. And that math is relying on basically a type of transform. I think that's what they call it. And so what you're basically doing is just you're taking is the same thing they use in recognizing harmonic oscillations have repeating patterns. So anything you see that oscillates and has more than one piece, you'll see that it cycles through periods where this is especially interesting. There's a Newton's Cradle that does this, with stuff moving sideways, okay? And you can see it so easily, where it gets they're all moving in a different way, and all of a sudden they start all moving the same way. And, and so it's a repeating pattern that's built into the motion. And this is just the same kind of thing. The envelope pattern creates a repeating pattern. So the idea would be is that when you have multiple slits, it's most visible with multiple slits, but it's happening with the single slit and it's happening with the double slit, but you can see it, okay, with the multiple slits. And what it's basically saying is the multiple slits are creating an image here, okay, with the widest slits, and that's creating a very tiny little bar. So you could say it's a very small one. And then this pair, okay, is creating another bar, but a little bigger, twice the size, you could say. And then this set is creating another bar. You could say that would be twice the size. And then this set would be creating another pattern, and that would be twice the size. So you get the idea that it's a pattern now where they're all stacked on top of each other, from the smallest one right all the way up. Now the truth is if you keep going, these all have a pattern, right? So they're all going to be bars that is at the set distance, and you can see where, well, now they're not on top of each other anymore, right? Okay, so they're nowhere near lined up. There's no point like this where they're on. So there won't be any point where that reoccurs until you go, 2 feet away or something. So the pattern you get when you have more slits is you get a pattern where you have a bright, and then you have a bright, and you have a bright, and they're very far. I mean, it's 3 feet, 4 feet between them. It could be even a meter between them. When you get to 7, 8, 9 slits, all you get is a laser beam circle at very distant points. And it's because that's when this pattern repeats. And that's all you're looking for, is how long it takes for the pattern to repeat. And so the diffraction gradient's doing the same thing. It's just creating a pattern, okay? And you only get like 2 of them usually because they're really far apart, okay? And so you'll get an image of everything that went in. So if you have a picture of Donald Duck, you'll get a picture of Donald Duck, okay? Little duck ears. Over here. That's what you'll get a picture of it, and you'll get the red picture, the blue picture. You'll get the blue picture, the green picture, and the blue picture. So so you get the color separation. Because they're going to have shorter nodes, smaller nodes for each color. So that's what's separating it out, is that you've taken this pattern, and the 3 colors have a different pattern. It'd be a different. This will be a smaller first bar, and the second bar will be smaller, and the third bar will be smaller. So each one is building a different little pyramid. So it'll show up at a different location, and that's what's separating the light out. So anyway, so it's clearly dependent on this path length difference thing being real. That the number of the distance has within it a certain number of frequency, wavelengths, and how many number it has inside of it is creating the pattern, theoretically. That there can only be a certain number when I take this length and I leave it the same size, and then I take this line and make it go over here. This line's getting longer. This line stays the same. That's why it's on a curved surface. And this line, you see how much longer it gets. And there's certain places where it's a wavelength longer, and you have a part, and then you have a node, and then you have a node. And what we've discovered, thanks to a couple of people, including Steve, is that what happens is the nodes are getting bigger and further apart as you go across the arc by some curve. They stay small for a while, then they get bigger, and then they get really big. Okay, so it goes this way up that line. But clearly we don't see any of this stuff because of that very fact. The very fact that they are spreading the light over a smaller and smaller surface means it's less likely to be visible. The photons, it might even be that it spreads so much that because photons are polarized, the light has to hit too big a surface and the polarization is broken, so we can't see it. So that might be the only reason why we don't see any of these nodes, is because of this very fact that the light is being spread too thin. But anyway, so those are interesting facts, okay? But Steve's contention that he can change how many, the path length different mass. So he's not disputing me. So in spite of the fact that he's labeling the video debunking Gary's 2 slit shit, he's debunking Professor Lewin. He's debunking every physicist that's ever talked about the subject, especially the ones doing the fancier math. So he's debunked I Lecture Online guy, Van Briesen. He's debunking him also. But he doesn't have the balls to title the video debunking Van Briesen, because this is Van Briesen's end-slit math. The end-slit math is dependent on this resident pattern creation. That's what the math is doing, is recognizing the pattern is going to reoccur at a certain location. The alignment will reoccur. No, I just make that clarification. So he's making a bold assertion, not a small one. And again, it's one, just as his kinetic energy experiment debunks Professor Lewin's own words, it's a complete contradiction to Professor Lewin's absolute statements about the conservation of momentum. Instead, he just keeps doing this shit. He's debunking me when he's debunking every physicist I've ever seen at the same time. And it just should be noted, okay, that what he's debunking is just not my theory. It's a theory accepted by most people. doing the experiments. Like I said, the path length difference being an example of the phase difference being the cause of the effect is a fact accepted by everyone. He's saying that's not the cause of the effect. Being in phase and out of phase isn't causing the effect, is what he's saying, because there's no other way to interpret what he's saying. Because you can't have a full wavelength of difference. You can't create extra full wavelengths of difference. You can't do it. All right, so with that premise, we will play this next piece of shit, no doubt. Oh, it's just, it's so man versus hamster. Ooh, that's productive. Physics, yes. Test. Okay, physics test. So what's, I'll attempt not to react, but what's the point of this? Does he have new videos? Let's see if there's new ones. Oh, too bad. Okay. On 2, let's see, 2 what? On 2 slit, wrongly claims impediment dictates envelope. So he's still arguing about this, the logical argument, I'd argue the pretty logical argument that you can find an easy correlation between the dimensions in a slit experiment, that you can easily correlate the dimensions of the impediment to the envelope and the dimensions of the outside surfaces as creating the little bars. There's a clear correlation in the sense that the wider the distance between two surfaces, the smaller the bars get, for the logical reason that there's more wavelengths of difference possible. The further away the 2 points are, the more wavelengths of difference is possible. So that logic is irrefutable. So he's saying there's something wrong with that essential logic of associating the distance between the points or the focuses and how many places you have where you can have constructive and destructive interference. And again, that's a standard of all reasonable thought on the subject uses that phase, in phase, out of phase, path length of different logic. So he's saying path length of difference is not the correct interpretation. What else did I want to say about that? Yeah, so the other point is that he put, he makes it, his videos are so hard to pay any attention to because he spends so little time explaining the experiment. So I think what he said he did was put a hair. Okay, hair is like 150 nanometers. It's a lot less than the wavelength of light, right? So if a hair is less than the wavelength of light, you would argue it can't create any nodes. But that's the trick of it, right? So let's use the surface analysis and say what do we get? So if we take a single slit, we have 2 surfaces, 2 sources. Now if we stick a hair in between, we didn't create 4 sources because the 2 sources are too close to each other. So we essentially just created 1 source. Alright, so now it becomes the 3-source experiment. So that's the part that might be throwing a monkey wrench in, is the hair, because it's smaller than, okay, a wavelength of difference between its sources, might actually be making destructive interference between the nodes created by these. So let's say these were creating bars that had a certain size. What the hair could be doing is causing interference, I would argue, in the sense of jamming, not the kind you think of, constructive, but it could be just splitting these bars. So it's creating a pattern that's just creating destructive between the bars, and that obviously would cut them in half. So that might be what happens when you put something smaller than a wavelength in the experiment. But clearly it needs to be analyzed. I mean, there could be explanations. He's certain he knows what the explanation is. He knows what the consequence is. He knows. But he didn't do enough experiments to really know that. I mean, what he certainly didn't do was just put in something like a standard size and then put in something half that size and then do this experiment and show how it's a different number of bars. The small bars change. So he didn't do it in any kind of clinical way, any kind of way that anybody could be certain he's doing the experiment right. So like all of his experiments, again, the point could be made. He's already been caught doing sloppy experiments, sloppy theory, pushing things with the same, the same amount of, the same energy, and yet he's using gravity, which depends on mass. So heavy things will get more, light things get less. You can't use gravity to create an equal push. Gravity isn't a spring. Works differently. It's things like that. So it's because he doesn't understand. He creates experiments that aren't likely to produce durable results. They just end up being bad card tricks. Okay. So with that premise, now leave us begin. This crap. Oh, it's only 2 minutes? Cool. Oh, that's the new one. Yeah, this is the one we have to do this shitty one first.
This video is intended for people who make a counter argument and know something about the physics.
Alright, so he's playing music again.
Please, Gary, give me some.
So this is, we're playing music, doing the routine. He thinks nobody else could do this, but the truth is nobody would go low enough to waste their time doing this on physics videos. These are physics videos, and this is the game he's playing. Flat Earthers don't even do this, as far as I know. I don't watch too many of their videos, but they don't bother doing this.
Some warning before you're going to crack a joke like that.
So I shouldn't have to explain path length differences
that I had to explain to you.
Right, so he took a clip out of the 15-minute video I want him to play. So he takes a tiny little clip out of it, where I'm saying, we're going to talk about path length differences as the vectors, and I'm pointing out, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail on that because I have to make a 15-minute video because morons can't listen to anything longer. Okay? So he took that little piece out. So he's aware of the video. He won't argue with the theory in the video. Now, obviously, there's pieces of it right now that I would take out because, we now know they're not equal size nodes. So I can take that part out and replace it with something better. But the rest of the arguments are the arguments, and you don't really have a counter argument for the fact that the wave theory doesn't work. You can't respond to any of those points. You'll never answer the question, do you think the Young analysis of two waves is in any way accurate? Do you think Thomas Young knew there were two patterns? Will you ever answer those questions? No, because you're a coward.
You mean the path length differences that I had to explain to you?
So he keeps saying it like that this ever happened. He has no evidence that he did anything to improve my knowledge of double slits ever. He has no proof of any of that nonsense.
You're a piece of work, you are.
You're a preposterous liar. Like I said, I shouldn't respond, but he's just such a fucking liar.
The truth is the pattern is fundamentally just created by measuring those distances.
Yeah, but path length differences all.
You're just wondering why he would bother arguing this. Because again, he's not debunking me. So he could play this music and show Professor Lewin talking about path length differences. And the wavelength, a whole wavelength of difference. And he could play this corny music. Do you think anybody would respect you, Steve? I mean, anyone at all on Earth? Anyone? Even your silly trolls? Because now you lose the trolls too, right? Because you're attacking a sacred god of theirs, or something like that. I don't even know what it is to them. He's kind of a silly, eccentric character, in my opinion. But yes, whatever. You want to think he's the god of physics, or Feynman, for example. You could play this while should I play Feynman's video and do this buffooning crap? I should actually play silly music while he draws the two stupid loops in the wrong location, where he doesn't even show the double slit pattern. I mean, you're just so pathetic.
Always been mainstream theory. All you've done is pinch their theory, take the waves away.
Again, so he keeps making this pinching argument. There's a point where it's slander, Steve. You have zero evidence. And you keep saying this shit. So until you can actually prove one of your accusations, there's a point where I'm going to have a right to write to England and, tell them that one of their citizens is, what was the word they would use? Isn't playing cricket. His little mallet's got cork in it. He's cheating the game because he doesn't have any evidence, and he keeps making these silly, stupid, retarded, fucktarded, evil accusations. You have no evidence, liar. None. Zero.
Well, you'd say, well, it's path length difference, but not waves. It's now me broken out.
Whatever. I've been talking about it being particles for 10 years. There's no doubt about that. There really isn't any doubt about that, asshole. So he's just making up this crap. Like there was some indecision about what I was arguing. I've always argued light was a force.
Tons now, me broken photons. No, it isn't, Gary. You fucking dickhead.
Okay, you keep saying it, but you don't prove it. So you're laughing at their theory at the same time. So let's just understand, his assertions are breaking their physics also. He's laughing at the concept of conservation of momentum. He's laughing at it. Says it's nonsense.
Broken photons is a fucking stupid concept.
Not if you understand it's a frequency and you can break the frequency and rearrange the frequency. I just don't know how this would make even a stupid troll, how they would say that, what he's saying is I can change the arrangement and then I can rearrange it again. I can take Morse code and I could convert it into Japanese or something, and then I could convert it back into Morse code. No big deal. Anyway.
Which just doesn't pan out in reality. You keep talking about reality, but you want to fucking...
Well, it's good he's playing the music over himself, so that makes it fit. I mean, this is such crap. I mean, this is really not what anyone should have to endure. This waste of goddamn brain space and time with this herky-jerky, whatever the fuck this is, shit. The people voting for this. The assholes who sit there and reward this monkey for this fucking, organ grinding noise. You're such assholes. Okay, so Frost Losh, that's Farley, that's the cowboy. Okay, so the cowboy's probably 3 of these. That's the cowboy. Okay, last video, go for out 5 stars. So 5 stars for this rinky-dinky crap as some kind of physics video. Ugh, Michael Falwell, a complete asshole. Just, it's just too stupid. Steve Godfrey doesn't know what fucking science is. No, you don't understand. I wonder who he's talking to. It'll be veiled in a whole bunch of, sexual deviant. He's obsessed with that. So yeah. It's just too far, too stupid. And then there's Jerry stuck in the middle of this to embarrass himself. His idea that particles can scatter and reunite with a frequency sounds like particle-wave duality to me. So it's clearly just particles, bullets, flying at a frequency, and that sounds like a duality to him. That somehow I've claimed the bullets are connected to each other and move like a wave. No, that's what they're claiming. That's their story, idiot. I can't believe people can say something so fucking stupid. I can't make it any... If you wanted to describe a purely particle theory, how could you make it more particle than my theory? How exactly could you make anything happen in the universe and describe it, a photon, and make it any more of a particle theory than what I'm describing? How could you create a frequency for particles other than just have them at a frequency? Is there some other way they could wear their frequency, idiot? It's just these guys are so fucking stupid. Oh, it's just playing semantics. What's semantic about it? It's just too stupid. So anyway, my idea. Oh, okay. So he has a theory. Let's see what his theory is. My idea is that photons are always waves. Waves in what? Waves that only go like a bullet. Waves that fly just like a bullet. But not like water waves. Like what? Then what kind of waves is it like? The only waves I am familiar with are waves in mediums, where the substances are forced to connect to each other. Like in the atmosphere, it's the atmospheric pressure that forces the molecules to be connected to each other. All waves can interfere, diffract, reflect, and bend around corners. But not two of them can't make two patterns, idiot, so you're still stuck. Sound doesn't make the double slit pattern. Water doesn't make the double slit pattern. So you just don't have any correlation to anything that's a wave that makes the pattern that shows up in the double slit. Or in the multi-slit for that matter. There's no correlation in any wave mechanics. So anyway, it doesn't matter. But photons also have quantum properties. So this is all just baby talk, no evidence, blah, 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 blah. Jeez, pathetic idiots. Clearly not on the subject. Yeah, that too.
Try it someday. You might be fucking surprised. Unfortunately, today's the day I'm going to have to start showing you a little bit of reality.
Yeah,
You're in for a shock, you moron.
So if it's a single slit, I just measure this distance of 2 point sources. I just divide how many wavelengths.
So he's just going to make the same argument in another video, but is he going to show any better evidence? That's the point, right? So I've clearly pointed out in the other 2-hour video, there's no evidence. There's just a bunch of whatever that was, this crap where he makes accusations, but no physics.
Fit inside of there, and that'll tell me exactly how many of these nodes I'm going to get on an equidistant line.
Well, there are several problems with that guy.
Okay, so that part there's no problem with, because that's exactly what everybody else's math is doing. So that's their math. You called it a brilliant simulator because it puts it on a curved surface and it decides exactly how many nodes there are based on how many wavelengths fit in the dimension. That's exactly what his math does. The math for that simulation does exactly that. So how can you refute that statement, Steve? It's just too stupid of you. It's what everyone else has accepted. You're saying you're the only one and you've proved it wrong. But you won't show us.
Mainly that it's wrong. Where do I start? Well, for one, the number of wavelengths in that single slit space is different to the number of fringes in that curved space.
Okay, so he says it's different. So where's your evidence that it's different? Where are you going to produce that? Okay, show us.
It's different to the number of fringes on that curved line. Doing your string thing with notches on, I use a real tape measure so it would be accurate. You actually get double the number. You actually get double the number of fringes, not the same number. Then
So he's saying per wavelength you get double. Well, double would be interesting. So let's just say, okay, that would be incredibly interesting. But if it's exactly double, then it doesn't mean much, because actually when I originally suggested it, I was suggesting it was just one side that made that many. And then I said, wait a minute, it can't be just one side because both sides would be the wavelength, blah, 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 blah. So if it's true, then it just validates what I originally stated, which I didn't think was right. But you do understand that this isn't significant. The point is it's completely controlling how many there are, how many points which with there can be a full wavelength of difference. But okay, let's see your tape measures.
you have another problem, Gary. The number of fringes that fit on that curved line, the number of fringes and the size of the fringes changes when you remove the impediment. The number of small fringes and the size of the small
Okay, so let me see you do that with the tape measure. Oh yeah, that's right, you won't do that with a tape measure.
fringes changes quite dramatically when you remove the impediment. So
Alright, so we didn't see him do these tape measure things to show that it's twice as many. So that's fine. I mean, maybe I'll ask the Miskamosko guy, is it twice as many? I mean, I'm not bothering with all that mathematical crap and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's a certainty that it's a certain limited number, because obviously on the curved surface, it has to be a finite number. So there's no dispute that it has to be a finite number.
you still have those outside surface distances that fits a certain number of wavelengths in that you say dictates the number of fringes on that curved line.
So this is the same argument that was in the other video. So again, he's still saying that he can change how many places you can have a path length difference by just sticking something in. And that somehow is going to change how many vectors create a path length difference of a full wavelength. It's a very bold assertion. So let's see your evidence. And if it's the same evidence you already provided, well, that's going to be pretty bad.
This is the sort of width of slit we're talking about now.
Okay, so at least it's showing in the slit this time. You can almost sort of maybe, I don't know what that is exactly. Is this the open part here? And this is, what is this? I don't know. I don't know.
Only wide slit, isn't it? Now we've removed the hair altogether.
So he had a decent image of it and left it on the screen for about a millisecond, right? I mean, it really was a millisecond.
Sort of width of slit.
Okay, so I guess this is dark here and this is dark. So that's the movable part. So this is a opening. He has two pieces of stuff that slide in and slide out. That's the assumption.
That's what we're talking about now. You see the hair?
Alright, didn't really see the hair. So, sorry, whatever.
Wide slit, isn't it? Now we've removed the hair altogether.
Yes, I've always argued wider is better. So yes, more bars.
These are finer now.
Alright, so he says they're finer now. Finer than what?
I can't really measure them, but they're a lot finer. I've had to zoom in to see them. You can see they're finer than the original fringes.
Okay, so we didn't get to see the originals, and we certainly can't tell they're finer. So again, he's proved it to himself, but he's not going to prove it to us, okay? So that's the problem here. Now, as I just pointed out, if you put something smaller than a wavelength of light as the impediment, you are creating a third source that could cause, okay, blotching in the pattern and maybe cut the nodes in half. I don't know exactly what the theory would be when you put something smaller than a wavelength of light, right? It obviously can't, by theory, it can't interfere with itself. There's no correlator to the third thing, right? If there's three sources, these two can create two paths. This one can't create two paths on its own because you made it so small. And it certainly can't create any path length differences. But what it certainly can do is break what these two made. That is theoretically possible. But it doesn't matter to you. Why would you use a hair when you could use some much larger object to prove your point? Why are you using something smaller than a wavelength of light? Because you're certainly destroying the idea of four sources. And you have to understand why. You do understand if there's less than a wavelength of difference in your base, less than a wavelength in your base, you can't have any points of constructive interference.
Can't you? Yeah, they're finer than the original fringes, aren't they?
And yet, when you remove the impediment...
So none of that was seen in any way that we could all agree, wow, that was really good evidence, right? If I presented that as evidence, okay, you people would be all over me, harassing the fuck out of me. Calling me all kinds of names. What kind of asshole do you think you are? How dare you? You should be ashamed of yourself. How can you claim a scientific fact based on evidence that bad? I would be put rightly in the category of a flat earther. That's the kind of evidence flat earthers present. And the fact that Stephen took a long time to make these videos, he had to add all this editing crap and all this other stuff, and instead of giving us good evidence, he spent all that time, he wasted all that time with his stupid music and his jump cuts.
The size of them can halve, depending on the size of the impediment. With a small impediment in place, if you remove the impediments, they shrink.
All right, these are all things you're saying, but you're not showing it. So again, you're not showing it in any kind of credible way. Let's just put it that way, okay? You think that was a credible demonstration. Forget it. If that's your definitions, we're really in there. We have a failure to communicate. Yes, there's a failure to communicate. Language doesn't mean anything anymore.
If you remove the impediments, the small fringes shrink. Now, isn't that strange? You remove the impediments and the small fringes shrink.
All right, I'm just saying that to just understand what he's saying, that means all the math that's used has to be wrong. Because all the math isn't accounting for any shrinkage. It's using the distance, and it's saying that distance will create fringes at a certain spacing. And you're saying the spacing is completely different. Well, their math doesn't know that. So you're proving them wrong. Understand? You're proving all of physics wrong. Not me, all of physics.
The small fringes that you said were dictated solely by the outside surfaces. Can't be true, can it? Because when you remove the impediment...
It can't be true that the path length difference is being created by the distance between the two sources. You're saying it's not being created by the distance between the two sources. It's being created by some magical new thing created by the magical new thing you introduced. That's not in anybody's math, Steve. I'll say it again. Even the four surface math isn't doing magic. It's just doing what I said. It's taking this and adding this and then adding this and then adding that. It's making a pattern out of the distances. You're saying the distances aren't how you see or find the pattern. There's no other thing to say. I mean, it's stupid.
They shrink. How did that happen, Gary? It's almost as if you've never done any checks. It's almost as if Gary didn't know that. Almost as if he never does any experiments.
Yeah, I've said it again. Why would I do imprecise, sloppy experiments? We already have you for that. There's no point in doing experiments badly. There really isn't. That's just making noise. So if you're not competent to do them well, you don't do them. That's why I've offered to pay real money, hundreds of dollars to somebody who has the equipment to do them well. Like the Distinti guy, right? He's doing a very nice 3D printing parts, doing all of this stuff. Yeah, it's for a dumb idea, but that's the way you do the experiment. You do it well. You don't do it badly. Oh, what an asshole.
It'll tell me exactly how many will end up on the surface.
No, it won't. Not without a lot of adjustments.
Please.
So he keeps saying it, and what have we seen as evidence? Is there any reason to believe him so far? Has he provided anything like good evidence? No, he just keeps doing the asserting part, and I keep reacting to his assertion. I really shouldn't. Let's just play the fucking piece of shit video.
That's where the two lines have the biggest difference.
Whoopee, you got that bit right.
If I made a string, just tie the string under these two things and move the string with notches on it.
Which Gary's never thought to do.
I've just described it. Why would I think to do it? Okay, again, it's just a way of illustrating the fact that there's a correlation between the distances and the arc, and that's all it was intended for. It's just a way of understanding what path length difference is, just like a spirograph could show you that.
All this time, he never bothered to do it. He just guessed what would happen, and he's been guessing wrong.
With the notches of...
So again, I didn't guess wrong. I went with what is, if we go out and we survey people right now about node sizes of the slit pattern, and we're talking about physics students. So let's say you think if I surveyed the average class at MIT right now, and I asked them, besides the central maximum being twice the size, what size are all the other nodes? What do you think the answer is going to be, Steve? Do you think they're going to all know? Oh yeah, they start off small and they get progressively larger. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
This wavelength here, when I get to this top, I'll end up with half the notches on one string, half the notches on the other string. And actually, if I did have a 0.5 remainder, half of 14.5 would be 7.25.
And because he's never actually done this experiment, he just talked about it, he just guessed what would happen.
Of course I've done the experiment. I didn't do the string thing because I can't do the string thing to the right thousands to one ratio. I can't put the model, the scale model won't fit in this basement, idiot.
Assumed what would happen would be what suited his purpose. Facts didn't matter, details didn't matter, accuracy didn't matter, reality didn't matter, nature didn't matter.
No, all of this doesn't matter because it has nothing to do with the underlying theory, the underlying points being made about what's relevant. You're saying path length difference doesn't matter. I'm clearly saying it's the whole experiment. And when you really think about it, it's just about where are your origins. And if you get the origins right, you can figure out why the pattern looks the way it does, because there's origins, 4 of them in the double slit.
So all that mattered was that Gary could say, well, I said this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to go with that. Never bothered to test it. my guesses are good enough. No, they're not good enough, Gary. Your guesses are shit. I keep telling you, your guesses really are shit. That's why
Again, it wasn't a guess, it was an assumption. That's all. There was no counter evidence. There was no reason for me to believe anything else, so I didn't believe anything else. Because there was no reason to. Oh, jeez, what an idiot.
I offer you this challenge today to shave your head bald if you can do it.
So he wrote this in text. I've already said, fuck you in the ass till dead. What's your penalty? Because I want you to be, I want a real one, okay? I don't want some, oh, go hurt yourself. Cut your ears off. No, fuck that, okay? I want you to do what you really should do, is maybe do some surgery on yourself, maybe take your brain out and wash it in some soap.
This experiment for once on camera. Let's see you do it. And if it doesn't get the results you've been predicting, shave your head bald, or at least have the integrity, the honesty to say.
So why would that have anything to do with integrity? And even you doing this antics? What the fuck are you talking about? Oh yeah, that's right. You're not talking about anything. You first say I should be persuaded by evidence, and then if I'm persuaded by evidence, you say I should shave my head. I've been persuaded by the argument. Okay, the argument is true. They are changing in size. I had no reason to believe they did until somebody gave me reason to believe they did. You see how it works, asshole? So the guy showed me his simulator, okay, and he showed me the math he was using, and I said, oh, fuck, he's right. They changed size.
Look how fucked up Big Style. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry for slandering Walter Fendon. Sorry for slandering Steve and every fucker else. You have been wrong, Gary.
So just more horseshit, and I've admitted when I've been wrong. And the point is you're trying to say that this fact, this detail, has something to do with my theory of cars. Because I thought tires were made out of chocolate, it means the rest of the theory is somehow flawed. No, the rest of the theory is fine. It's not a big deal. Okay, this tiny detail is just that, a tiny detail. Just like whether there's twice as many nodes or half as many, or so what? It's not the point. The point is it's a fixed number. That's the point. The point is it's fixed. There's only so many per amount of space you make between the 2 points. The 2 points are dictating the outcome. That's the theory, and that's the theory you haven't touched. At least with anything called a clean experiment. I mean literally clean.
The only person who's going to be surprised about that is you, and whatever idiots have been following you and thinking you're great. Because you've got to be a complete fucking pillock to think that you are.
So again, let's understand, he's claimed he has proven momentum isn't conserved, okay, in direct contradiction to what many physicists, doctors, professors will say. And so again, that means nothing though. He's not going to bother informing them that he proved them wrong. Fuck.
Worth following for anything other than comedy value. I would highly recommend following Gary for comedy value.
So here, at a point where I have constructive, because they're both equidistant.
Oh, but the point I was intended to make just then, before I got distracted, was...
So again, he won't play that video. He'll just take these little tiny clips out of it. Because all the good points he's going to ignore. All this stuff he has no answer to. Like 2 waves can't make 2 patterns. He knows it. He knows what they're saying is wrong. So let me hear you acknowledge that, Steve. Acknowledge that they are being deceptive and inaccurate to draw 2 waves and say that's causing the pattern. Because it's not.
That all the other things that follow from his guess that the fringe is going to be equal just by virtue of using a piece of string around a curved surface, all this guesswork that follows is thrown into chaos, and it's even more meaningless than it was before because it's now founded on something.
So let's understand, I've written it up now, so it's going to be in the description of this video. It's been in the description of all the videos, the last 20 videos or so. Just simple bullet points. Okay, so I've reduced the whole thing down to some simple little bullet points. And that's all that video, it's just a representation of what's in that video, pretty much. And the only point I have to modify is 3 words, where I say they're the same size, the nodes. Yeah, they're not the same size. So what? So what?
That even he cannot deny, when he actually tries it, is a flawed starting point. His starting point is that these fringes have to be equal, starting from the 90-degree point, working back.
Okay, so again, I've already said, I've conceded they don't have to be equal. That was never a big deal assertion. It was only to make it easier to calculate. I said this is a way you could calculate where they are because they're equal size. So once you know what the one at 90 degrees is, you know what all the rest are. Well, I was wrong about that, and I'm conceding I was wrong about that. But I'm still saying you can't deny that the one at 90 degrees is the most accurate one, or 0 degrees, however you want to look at it, the one going this way. You can't deny, okay, well, you could, because you're a dishonest, duplicitous sack of shit. So we don't know what your opinion is. But see, he doesn't opine on anything that he doesn't have an answer for. He's such a coward. Unlike me, who's facing everything he says, he's running from everything I say. Everything I say that's on a subject, he runs from it. The ones he can't deal with. The questions he can't fucking answer. All the paradox questions. Run away. I don't know any math. Well, you're confusing me. They're simple questions. Do you think a rocket is going to be turned? Okay, this is a simple question. I shoot a dime out here going 1,000 miles an hour. I shoot a 2 kilograms out this way going 1 mile an hour. What does my rocket ship go if it was going 10 miles an hour this way? Okay, where's it go, Steve? Answer the question. Fucking coward. Fucking coward. All right, where were we? Sorry. I'm just going to play that little bit again just because I don't remember what he said.
Even he cannot deny, when he actually tries it, is a flawed starting point. His starting point is that these fringes have to be equal, starting from the 90-degree point, working backwards. Therefore, you supposedly get these two things, which is stupid.
Okay, so the point is that there's no denying this fact, okay, that the path length difference, I'm going to call this 90 degrees. Let's call it, all right, I'll call it 0. All right, let me enlarge and biggen the viewpoint here. All right, so we'll call this 0 degrees. So we know that we're going to make two vectors, and so one vector is going to be the L length. Okay, so that's this vector. It's always L. It's L here and it's L here. So that's one of the lines. And the other line is going to be 1 millimeter away. Well, less than that. It's going to be exactly the path length difference of the opening plus L. Okay, so we know that those two lines, we know they have to have, there's a certainty about at 0. There's just no denying. This one is longer by exactly the distance of the opening. It's exactly that much longer. So if the opening is 19.3 or 19 point, we'll make it a 5 just to ensure that we're exactly out of phase. So this is perfectly out of phase. All right, it's a half a wavelength out of phase. So this has to be an off at 0. So the simple argument was, yes, if the nodes are all the same size, then this is pretty easy to calculate. But no, they're not the same size, so it's not as easy. But the fact is, it's still going to have there's going to be a real number that defines this curve. So the amount they're getting bigger per node does have a number that correlates to a curve. And if you know that number, then you could know exactly, you could predict by knowing this one, you could know this one. By knowing this one, you can know this one. So, but that's all this was used for, is just a way of calculating where these nodes were. So that's the only use it was for. It wasn't part of the theory. It was part of the way you would calculate where the positions would be. It wasn't the theory of why they have a position. It's just a way of calculating where the position is. So that's the only purpose it had. So you haven't touched the theory any. You're just arguing with some trick I was using to find a shortcut to know its position. That's it. You haven't defeated the theory. You've defeated a shortcut. Fucking idiot.
Good explanation about how the central maxima comprises that and a dot in the middle, and it makes one big. It just gets ugly and stupid, and it gives you a headache trying to.
Okay, so now he keeps denying this one without ever going into the details of it. But I mean, it's quite obvious. Okay, so I mean, it's another irrefutable fact, like the Feynman bad drawings that he never has dealt with. You know, where Feynman draws, well, this one just creates a hump over here, and this one creates a hump over here. The slit is less than a millimeter across. How did it do this and this? You know, it can't do that. All it can do is make two humps that are 1 millimeter apart. He's never dealt with that fact. Never shown us how Feynman was right to do that. So this is part of his duplicity. So just understand, he's a hypocrite, a liar, and a duplicitous one. It's overt duplicity for him to say only Gary has been wrong. And none of these other physicists have been overtly wrong. Not a little bit wrong, gigantically wrong. Not wrong about some little trick they use to calculate something. Wrong about how they understand exact facts. Like detector experiments. Do you think they've been done, Steve? He won't answer the question. Okay. So, where was I? Yeah, so this thing is really important. Okay, so let's understand. Let's say we're going to analyze the experiment, and we're just taking a point source. This L has to be here, and this L has to be here, in the sense that these are the 2 point sources. This is their 90-degree point, right? 90-degree point. They don't share the same 90-degree point. It's obviously the difference is the width of the slit. The D distance is obviously a difference in where they are. And it's a difference that affects this up here also. Because this is the shortest, straightest line here. This is the 90-degree angle. And as soon as I take this line and try to bend it over this way, I'm making it longer. It has to be longer, correct? If I bend this line over this way, I have to make it longer, don't I? Is there some choice? No, there isn't any. So I can't sit there and play this equidistant game. So anyway, the whole point is that where the 2 lines are the same length, it's happening inside of 1 millimeter. The nodes are going to be gigantic. That 1 millimeter is that line. How do I account for the rest of this? Because you can't do it inside of that 1 millimeter. It doesn't work. At this point, right? So let's just redraw it. At this point, where this line goes to this line. So this one's still 90 degrees. This one isn't 90 degrees anymore. At that point, it has to be an on, right? It has to be, because you just said it was an on right here. This one, inside the 1 millimeter, has to be on. So the whole node has to be on. So somehow that has to be an on, even though you're going to find clearly it's not an on. Okay, it doesn't work out that way. This is going to be an off right about here somewhere, or here. It's going to be a definite off, not an on. It's not going to be a fucking wavelength of difference. It's not enough of an angle for a wavelength of difference. There's no chance. So this is going to be an off right here. So you have an on here and an off here in the same node. It doesn't make any sense, does it? But it makes perfect sense if you want to understand why the central maxima is twice as big. It's because there's actually 2 nodes. There is an off here. The center is off, and these nodes start over here. Or they're really close to being on top of each other. One's blended into the other one. But that's the facts. You won't deal with that argument. You'll just pretend it was never made.
Shit, it's like if I give you a tangled, knotted ball of sticky, different coloured tapes and say, right, sort that out in the dark with your hands behind your back. That's what it's like trying to sort out Gary's shit. Because that's just how chaotic his ideas are.
So nothing chaotic about it at all. We know that these straight lines aren't diverging. So we know 1 millimeter here is 1 millimeter up here. Because the only way it gets bigger or spreads is it has to have an angle. 90 degrees doesn't spread. And you're inside of the 90 degrees. You're inside of between this 90 degree line and this 90 degree line. You're inside of that. which obviously can't be a whole node. It's impossible. It's inside of 1 millimeter. It's not even a millimeter. It's inside of a half of a millimeter.
He knows why they're supposed to make sense. Only he can deny reality to make these things make sense in his head. We can't deny reality. We have to live in a world where reality is real. We have to live in a world where we know that string...
Let's understand that his real world is this wavy, whatever, wooey, superposition, entanglement, all kinds of wooey voodoo.
idea doesn't make even patterns, and therefore everything that follows from it is bullshit.
The fact is they're not. Okay, the fact is that the notches won't line up.
And that makes you an idiot.
So even though I'm going to have a false center there.
Okay, so he's again still denying that there's a false center. See this pattern, this big stuff thing here, it's really just 1 millimeter. And it's still 1 millimeter here at the end. Okay, it never changes size. So what this is doing, these two lines are inside of 1 millimeter. How can you argue that? I guess I have to put that as one of my points, right? I think it is in there, but it's hard to word it. It's hard to put it in words, but I mean the fact is these two equidistant lines are inside of 1 millimeter. As soon as you move that a little tiny bit away from that one center piece, as soon as you move it a little bit this way or a little bit this way, it's not on anymore. It's not one path length. They're not the same length. And even you could sort of understand that if they're the same length, okay, that is in phase, so to speak, but obviously it's not phase if you want them to be in order. Like the whole idea is to actually send a piece from one surface and the other piece from the other surface is one full wavelength behind. It's actually showing up to be the second node, in the frequency. If you have a frequency, you don't want all the stuff to show up at the same time, then the frequency is gone. So if everybody shows up, bing, bing, you have 15 things and they all show up, bing, at the same exact time, you don't have a frequency. What you want them to do is show up, 7 show up, and then 7 show up. That would be good. Then you have a frequency. It might be even better if you got, I guess you just have to figure out what numbers you're using. 21, then 14, then 7. I shouldn't have started with that number in the first place, but you get the point, right? If there was 5, you don't want 25 to show up at once. You want there to be 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Then you'd have 5 photons.
And the trick is that isn't false. In all the other comparisons, you're comparing two lines that are moving in the same direction, and only in this case inside this tiny millimeter of distance.
It's not as tiny.
So there, you can't make it any clearer, right? It's an obvious difference. It's an obvious way of understanding why the comparison doesn't work, why this would be a fake node. The two lines are going in. You have to understand, if they're going in, how could they possibly go in to anything more than that 1 millimeter? Is there some extra space inside of 1 millimeter? How could they go in and make a node that's 7 centimeters? They start 1 millimeter apart, they go in, and they make a node that's 7 centimeters across. How could that make sense to anyone?
At the screen, it's bigger, it's expanded. You're confusing two situations here.
So it's expanded how? I mean, I drew it. I've explained it so many different ways. He still doesn't get it. They're going inside of 1 millimeter. They're not going, you can't make more space inside the 1 millimeter. They're not missing each other and going like this. That's not happening. It's too stupid.
And the real pattern starts here.
I mean, I'm not saying photons aren't missing. I'm just saying that obviously they're not the same path length at the center inside the 1 millimeter. The center between the 1 millimeter, the half millimeter point, that point, okay, isn't going over here and going over there. It isn't located somewhere else. It's located right in between the millimeter notches. It can't be located somewhere else. You can't put the center someplace other than the center.
And you jumped to this wrong conclusion because of your misunderstanding, and you jumped to this wrong conclusion.
So he says the same thing over again. I guess that's part of some sort of Freudian thing. He thinks he's going to convince somebody by repeating it over and over again.
simply because you also jumped to the wrong conclusion that the fringes would all be the same width from the 90-degree point to this 0-degree point. And you're wrong, and you're wrong, and you're wrong. They are different.
So why do you keep doing this? I mean, it's just so fucking annoying. And I've already conceded I was wrong, yes. But I wasn't wrong because I was making some scientific assertion. I was wrong because I made an assumption for which there was zero evidence indicating anything else. You will never show me the video on YouTube that explains that the nodes are getting bigger. Show me where I should have known otherwise. Show me one piece of evidence that was at my disposal that was showing otherwise. You know, besides your simulator that actually isn't the double slit experiment.
Widths. You decided how many fringes were going to be on that curved line, and you decided that they were going to be equal, but they're not equal.
So again, I didn't decide any of this stuff, and again, it has nothing to do with the theory regarding what's causing the effect. The fact that I misdescribed the effect, there's no misdescription of its cause, shithead. The cause isn't something you're finding a flaw in my argument for. You're finding a flaw in my observation of the effect, my assumption regarding an effect.
They are not equal. Nature doesn't make them equal. They are not equal. Geometry doesn't make them equal. They are not equal. Only you think they're equal. Walter Fenn didn't make them equal, did he? And you laughed at him the other week. You laughed your socks up at him.
Okay, he keeps making this point. Again, this is the third time he's made this argument, and I pointed out I mocked him because he titled a video, a web page, totally dishonestly. It's a preposterous title for the page. Show me where there's any evidence of any double slit math in his fucking simulation. Show me where there's a double slit in it. It's the single impediment math. Period. There's no other math in it, shit for brain. So quit telling me I mocked him for some other reason than his video was not what he claimed it to be. Fuckhead.
When he was the one who was right. You were the one who was wrong. You were the one who was wrong. You were the one who was wrong.
Well, he wasn't right because we still even know whether he's got the right number of nodes, do we? Did you count them? Did you count? Again, you didn't look into the math on his page at all. He's doing the same math I'm doing in the sense he's saying the distance represents a certain number of nodes, asshole. Does he have twice as many? Did you check his math? Fuck.
I thought somebody will tell you. In the week that's elapsed since then, I thought that one of your fans would have enough integrity, enough intelligence to point out to you, Gary.
To point out to me what? That he's only doing a single impediment experiment, the single needle experiment, and he's calling that the double slit. Is that what they should have pointed out to me? Oh, they don't need to because I already pointed that out. And you haven't responded in any way or in any kind to the overt deception of it. You're pretending it's still a great web page, even though it's completely a lie.
You've made a mistake here. Don't laugh at Walter Fenn. Walter Fenn is right. It's Gary who's wrong. The fringe widths aren't the same. The fringe widths aren't distributed evenly all the way around that curved surface.
They are distributed evenly. That's kind of the wrong word to use, okay? Proportionally. There's only a certain number of them, and they are distributed across the entire curve. That certain number. Period. That's the theory. That's what I was arguing. Okay, the rest was, again, I had no reason to believe the nodes were different sizes.
The curved surface does not solve the problem that you think it solves. You think it solved the...
I think it solves the obvious problem of getting rid of an infinite plane. So, just for that alone, you think there's something good about observing things on an infinite plane. That somehow you understand it's a finite pattern, but it's on an infinite plane. That duality makes sense to you. Well, I'm arguing it makes it so obvious that it's not an infinite pattern if you just put it on the curved surface. And as it doesn't make any difference in terms of this distortion on the plane isn't going to be any different than the distortion on the curved line, that's the good news. But it clearly makes it obvious that it's not an infinite pattern. It stops. It ends in a finite universe.
problem of the fringes on the outside getting wider and wider and wider when projected on a flat surface. But it doesn't totally solve that, because they do get wider and wider anyway, even when projected on a curved surface.
For different reasons. So again, there was nothing wrong with my logic. It's clearly correct logic to understand that if you project something and then you project it wider, it's going to distort the stuff on the outside more than the stuff on the inside. That, okay, is a rational understanding of what happens as a consequence of the farther distances and the fact that the photons are spreading with distance. So you have something further away, the photons spread more. So yeah, obviously. So there's nothing wrong with that logic. The point is they were already distorted going in on the curved surface.
It simply lessens how much they expand. And then there's another problem after that. The fact that nobody's ever seen these fringes anyway. To all intents and purposes, they don't exist. No one will ever show you them. You've never seen them. I've never seen them. Walter Fenton's never seen them.
So what? What does that have to do with the theory of their cause? So again, I think it would be really interesting, and again, I have said it for years. I have made this point at least 5 years ago. That why didn't they ever do the experiment where they just put a photographic film on either side of the experiment to see if any photons are doing the extraordinary bending, you know, the 90-degree bending, or the 10-degree, however you want to look at it. That would be a very good experiment to do. So I'm perfectly aware of it. I'm aware it's never been done. I'm aware that we don't know. So why is this relevant to you? What assertion do you think I've made that I haven't made?
They're simply theoretical. They don't exist. It's a ghost. You're chasing a ghost because it's...
I'm not chasing a ghost. The fact is they either do or do not happen. And this is important to understanding how the light gets diffracted. So if they don't exist at all, if no energy is going there, well then Feynman's out of luck. Okay, because Feynman's saying it's going everywhere. Okay, it's just improbable that it goes that way, but it definitely does go that way. So Feynman's theory is a little bit hurt. I think it's mortally hurt, but anyway. And I'm just arguing that electrons are causing the deflection. So frankly, it doesn't matter because, it's pretty easy to just argue that electrons can be going fast or they can be going slow. And depending on how fast and slow they're going, that means how much deflection there is. But you could argue that maybe to be deflected a full 90 degrees would mean the electron has to be going really fast, and there'd be no way of saying there's electrons going that fast. But that might be the interesting part, right, is to do the experiment with steel that's very hot and see if there's more likely to be pattern in those higher angles, because that would indicate that electrons are moving faster. But that would be my theory. What's your theory? Oh, that's right, you don't have one. You're proposing nothing, and you're claiming in some straw man way that I proposed something. I never proposed anything. I never stated as a fact they are there, they're not there. That never happened, Steve.
Suits your purpose. You're chasing a ghost that suits your purpose. That's how wooey your so-called science is. You are the woo master. You are the high priest. You are...
So again, he hasn't addressed a single comment I've ever made. Won't address any of the paradox arguments. Won't explain how he isn't contradicting Professor Lewin. I showed the Professor Lewin paradox in numerous videos. He hasn't responded at all to that paradox. Explained at all how it makes sense. Nothing.
the person who should be wearing
Coward.
a dog collar.
And here. And this just fills in the blank. The size of the laser, essentially, the thread of the laser beam going right through the middle, fills in this difference.
But seeing as you sometimes say the fringes are...
So, again, a valid point that this is a problem with some viewing some pattern is that some of the pattern is wiped out by the laser going right through and wiping out what would have been the pattern you could have seen if the laser didn't wipe it out.
Kind of cigar-shaped or elliptical. Other times you say they're more like bars. I think we can both acknowledge that sometimes they do have an elliptical-ish shape, an eye shape. You've described it a number of different ways. But in this instance...
And I've already pointed out the reason, the thing causing that is how far you have the laser from the slits. So the farther away you can put your source of light, the more guaranteed that your light source has nice parallel photons. So the more parallel your photons, the more square your bars are going to get. And the less, then the more you're going to get the image of the laser being diffracted into the pattern. I think that's the way it works. More square the further back, more round the closer. I think that's the truth. It could be the opposite, but I'm saying the factor that matters, a factor to be aware of, is how far the source is from the slits. Because the more straight the light goes in, it changes the clarity of the pattern.
Where they're cigar-shaped, eye-shaped, elliptical-shaped. How can you say that you're joining two elliptical-shaped things with a little bit of light in the middle that you say is a millimetre or so wide? How can you...
No, I just said the laser beam spreads over that middle. That's what I just said. So the clip he just had, that's not what I was saying. I wasn't talking about the millimeter anymore. I was talking about the laser going straight through. So you see how he plays these games.
And this just fills in the blank. The size of the laser, essentially, the thread of the laser beam going right through the middle, fills in this difference.
So you see how these two lines are diverging? That's the laser beam line. So I already talked about the one in the middle. Now I was talking about the laser going straight through and filling in the middle. So the 1 millimeter isn't going to fill in much because, yeah, it's a tiny place that little bit of light that goes this way and this way. The inside light isn't, it's certainly going to help fill it. But the light that's really going to fill it is going to be the light that's going to be coming from the laser, making a very big bright dot in the middle. I mean, that's a feature of the double slit that sort of sucks in terms of ruining the pattern, is that the middle is so bright when you have the slit wide. And it just kind of ruins the whole middle of the pattern.
But seeing as you sometimes say the fringes are kind of cigar-shaped or elliptical, other times you say they're more like bars, I think we can both acknowledge that sometimes they do have an elliptical-ish shape, an eye shape. You've described it a number of different ways.
Right, I described it as what I think it is, an image of the laser.
In this instance, where they're cigar-shaped, eye-shaped, elliptical-shaped, how can...
So in the multi-slit, right, when you have 5 or 7 of these slits, you get really perfect round images. And what they are is actual images. I would argue that if you actually took a laser that has an image in it, like Donald Duck, you'd actually get Donald Ducks at those locations. Because the more slits you have, you're basically starting to just project images to the locations.
Can you say that you're joining two?
Very low resolution. The more slits you have, the higher the resolution. So you're starting off with just like, you know, a 260 by whatever 180 image, you know, really cruddy resolution. And the more slits you put in it, the better and better the resolution starts getting, because you're putting more pieces of the image back together.
Elliptical shaped things with a little bit of light in the middle that you say is a millimetre or so wide. How can you say that you're joining those two elliptical shaped things to make one bigger elliptical shaped thing? Nobody can do that.
So again, the two things are completely unrelated. That's my whole point. The nodes being created by the lines going the same direction. So I mean, this is important. I don't know how you can't get this. I mean, I've been over it so many fucking times. I mean, how can you not get this simple argument? Okay. There's again, the point to remember always is that this is not one circle. This is two circles. This circle and this circle. And they're a little tiny bit out of alignment with each other. So there isn't one circle that all this happens on. It's two independent, okay, quarters. But anyway, so we're talking about this, okay, this little thing in between here, this little tiny one going right here, inside of 1 millimeter. We're saying the node size, let's say, was this. The point is the first place that you'll go where you keep this line the same length, so this line is L, and now this line has to meet with it and be a full wavelength different, okay? The point is that node starts somewhere after that millimeter. So some point after that millimeter is where your node is. That is your bright, the center of your bright. And obviously the center is quite distant from how far the node bleeds. So the center would be here. The node obviously bleeds almost a full half into the dark space. So even though this is where the bright's supposed to be, the bright is doing this. Okay, and obviously the same thing's happening on this side with this node. Okay, the real point where two lines have a path length difference of one wavelength, the first place there's a path length difference that's a full wavelength, right? This one that meet, they have the same wavelength, right? They're not this one isn't a wavelength longer. They're both exactly the same. The first place you go where they have a wavelength of difference, that's where the node starts. That's where the central maxima for this line is, and that's where the central maxima for this line is, where you have gone a full wavelength in the same direction. This has to exist. The first place where this exists, that's where the central maxima for this line is, and then the central maxima for this one is over here. And a simple argument is this is just getting filled in. That's that you don't understand? How that's... You think there's some part of that that's unreasonable? I mean, fuck.
It doesn't make sense, Gary. It just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. You can't take two ellipses and join them together.
All right, there's no scrutiny here. So there won't be any explanation for how everything I just said was perfectly rational and reasonable. There won't be any explanation. You won't show me that this center maxima created inside of 1 millimeter somehow made a node that's twice as big as all the other nodes. So it made a 10 centimeter node. It didn't even make a 5 centimeter node. No, it made a 10 centimeter node. How did it do that when it happened inside of 1 millimeter?
You can take two ellipses and join them together with a tiny little thing in the middle, and hey presto, you've got one big ellipse. It would look craft, wouldn't it? We would say, well, that's not right.
Okay, we can't see it, and the obvious reason is in the single slit is because the laser is going right through and blotting everything out. And then in the single impediment, you have some chance of seeing it, okay, frankly. All right, but you just have to do the experiment. Again, you're talking about what sizes you're doing it again. So the smaller the size, the bigger the nodes, and so that's wiping it all out, right? Because the node is spread over such a huge area that there's no way of knowing where that fake middle is from the rest of the middles, the other two middles.
Because we could do the experiment at a lower intensity and say, well, that's two ellipses joined together with a little dot in the middle.
Okay, so again, this lower intensity argument somehow would reveal something. You can't get rid of the extra light going straight through the single slit. You can't lower its intensity relative to the fringe. There's no way to do that, Steve.
Oh, and supposedly filled in by the light from the middle of the slit. So, it just happens to all work out perfectly smoothly to make a perfectly shaped smooth. It's not some weird shape made up of all these three different things. That, plus a dot in the middle, plus light from the middle. It just happens to make this perfectly shaped, smooth central maxima of the single slit that we do see.
Yeah, because it is reconstruction of photons. So again, if I'm correct, and you're reconstructing photons, they have rules about how they get reconstructed. And the rules would apply to whatever the sources are. So the photons you'll see have to obey those rules. That is not complicated.
Gary, it doesn't look anything fucking like what you're describing. You're a fucking prick if you genuinely think that... Anybody out there who thinks that Gary is speaking truth here, just go and try it. Make a single slit pattern.
Yeah, go ahead. Watch Professor Lewin cranking the experiment. And you'll see it change. You'll actually will see what he's talking about, frankly. I mean, I guess sorry, I don't have the clip handy, but I remember this from the clip, so I'm just saying, I'm sure, you just do it. There's two different ones. There's a better quality one and a lesser quality one. So we're talking about the 802 and 803X, the 3X version. So he uses an adjustable single slit, and what you actually do see when it gets really long is you actually do see this. Now, I'm exaggerating it a little. But you actually do see it. When this thing starts getting a foot long, it's just one big blob. And it's going wider and wider. You actually do see it. So, I mean, there is some evidence indicating it's a correct theory because this actually does happen. It does end up sort of looking like two nodes.
making a nice, decent, wide one. It's very, very easy. So you can have a good look at that central maximum. You just really inspect it closely for even the slightest sign of it being made up of that plus a dot and plus some light from the middle.
Yeah, I'll go play the Professor Lewin clip again of the variable single slit. And you're not going to see some beautiful, perfect transitions and all of this horse shit. But again, we're stuck with the quality of how somebody does the video, right? And the distance from the slits again, and all of those arguments. So the more coherent you can make the light, the more culminated it is, the more you're probably going to see those realities, those little features. So again, it's another argument for doing the experiments well rather than sloppy.
Or miraculously joined together to make one incredibly smooth and homogeneous mix. It doesn't fucking exist. You've got to be off your fucking rock to believe this stupid idea. It's fucking stupid.
Okay, what did he argue with? Did he argue with he didn't show us anything to make his argument that it's not possible. So he didn't give me any reasoning why it's wrong, except he thinks it's wrong. Okay. It makes perfect sense to me, frankly. Why is there a double maxima? Is there some other explanation? What's Steve's explanation? He doesn't have one. He has no clue. Has no way to explain it. What's conventional physics explanation? Let's ignore it. I don't see that double in there. I don't see it. Do you see it? I don't see it. What's Pierrot's explanation? I like to go fishing. Dog swim fish. Me boat. Blah, 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 blah.
Stupid ideas. I'm becoming shocked how stupid ideas can get. Sorry, I'm halfway through eating a butty here. It's a sandwich in Britain, the butty. But it's not, is it? That's not what the double width central maxima is in a single slit, is it? No, it's not. This is wishful thinking on your part. It's just you desperately trying to make your theory work based on a fundamental mistake of thinking that all the...
Okay, so there's not even anything close to evidence in this argument, right? He's just saying you're wrong. You're wrong. I say you're wrong because I say it. I wrote it on You're Wrong song. You're wrong. You're wrong, 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 wrong. Wrongy, wrongy, wrong, wrong, wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. You're wrong song by Stephen Bro. Wrong song. I mean Stephen Bruffy. He stole that, you know. I wrote that years ago. Proven fact.
Fringes would have to distribute around that curved line equally, and they're not equal. They're different widths. So you made a mistake, Gary. Sorry, you have.
So now he's changing the subject again, right? So he's just going to keep doing this. So obviously I said, I didn't... Again, he's making this assertion that it was some fundamental part of my theory that the nodes were equal sized. No, it was just an assumption based on the fact that there was absolutely no reasoning for me to believe they were different. None. And again, do you honestly think if we survey college physics graduates that they'll get the answer right? Because they certainly haven't been shown any reasoning. They haven't been shown the pattern on a curved surface. They haven't been shown anything that might give them knowledge of this fact.
Embarrassing.
And so that's why the center maxima is twice as big, a little bit more than twice in most cases.
Bullshit.
So whatever. Too stupid.
I was eating a what's it when I heard that. Bullshit, Gary. Don't make the lie worse by exaggerating it even further.
There's nothing to say, is there? It's my impression. Looks bigger than me. You know, to me, it looks bigger. So let's go play this Professor Lewin video again, and we'll see if it looks like it's more than 2 nodes worth. Looks like it to me.
Stupid.
Then the rest of the nodes is because it's actually a fake.
It's a fake. You're the fucking fake.
So again, he's doing all this laughing about the concept that's just so fundamental. Again, he thinks there's 10 centimeters inside of 1 millimeter. That inside of 1 millimeter is 10 centimeters of light inside of 1 millimeter. I can make a node that's 10 centimeters across inside of 1 millimeter. And he's laughing at me. Yeah, right.
What the fuck are you talking about? Okay.
It's really two separate nodes that started at the right distances, where this is a straight line, the shortest distance for this line, less than the shortest distance for that one, obviously. And that's where the node actually started, because it started with a 0.5 down here.
So that's exactly what I just pointed out. One line is fixed. It's always going to be L long. The other line has to stretch to meet the L line. And where it stretches a full wavelength of difference in the path length is where there's a node, where there's light, constructive interference. And that doesn't happen here. When this is at 90 degrees and this one isn't, obviously the number of wavelengths can be almost any kind of number I want. I can make it exactly a wavelength difference. This hypotenuse can be exactly a wavelength difference depending on what the width of this is. Or it can be exactly a half wavelength out of phase. I just change this base. I change the base. I change whether it's in phase or out of phase. So right outside that 1 millimeter, where the line stops doing this and it has to do this, I can make it either an on or I can make it an off just by changing the distance. That's their math, that's their geometry, and that's my geometry, and Stephen says it's not right. It's mockable. It's undeniable geometry.
If you say so. But no, it's not.
You can understand how I started with a 0.5 at that end, and then you start drawing your nodes.
The wrong size. Do you like that? And then you start drawing your nodes, and he starts drawing them all the wrong size because he's convinced it's supposed to be equally spaced, and they're not.
So again, I wasn't convinced. I had no reason to doubt. No reason to. None.
That's not how nature works. That's not how geometry works. You claim to be better at maths than me. I don't fucking see any evidence of that. I'm the one who's passed tons of exams that involve maths. When I said I'm no good at maths.
So it's not that you're no good. It's that you pretend it doesn't exist. You do have to, if you're going to make an assertion, okay, that their physics is wrong, their physics is math. So I'm just saying you're going to have to deal with that fact. And their math, you're saying, is wrong. Because their math is completely dependent on there being a fixed number of path length differences.
I don't mean I'm as bad as you.
So they've implied that this is an infinite pattern.
No, you guessed it was an infinite pattern.
No, that's just a lie. Obviously, it's implied. I said the word implied. Obviously, they imply it when they project it on a flat screen and just say it goes, forever. That's pretty much implying it's an infinite pattern.
And wasted 10 years of your life thinking it was an infinite pattern because you're a fucking dickhead. Nobody else has implied it. Nobody else has told you that. Just you guessing.
Now, so let's understand. It's another just right on its face a lie. Obviously, I'm the one saying it's not an infinite pattern. I'm the one saying that the math is using one radius, so therefore the math is predicting on the radius. The L distance stays the same through the whole. If I want to know this node, I want to know that node, I want to know that node, I have to use the same L.
You jump into conclusions, the very thing you accuse everybody else of. You're a cat.
Which it certainly is not. There's a specific number of nodes, and the number of nodes, the number of fringes, will be completely dictated by how many wavelengths fit between the distances.
And yet, that isn't true, because all we have to do is remove the impediment, and hey presto.
Okay, so he says it again. All right, so again, his assertion is that all of their math is wrong because there's magical new path length differences. I can make places where there's more path length differences that create constructive reconstruction of a photon, just by sticking something and changing the distance. Somehow I change this fixed distance that has a fixed number of nodes, and I can somehow make more nodes by just sticking something in between it. Well, that's a bold assertion. It should come with really good evidence, and you haven't provided anything close.
Those differences don't matter anymore. Suddenly the fringes shrink. How did that happen? Could it be that your theory was wrong? Could it be that your theory was wrong?
So if I made that deficit experiment...
So he keeps saying it against... my assumption was wrong. So how many times can I say, okay, yeah, I assumed the wrong thing. That has nothing to do with the theory. There's no theory. All right? It was just a way of saying, look how easy it is to calculate. That's all it was for. And that'll be seen in my videos. That's all I'm using it for. All I drew those little things for was to say, see, well, once you know one node, you know all the nodes. That's all I was saying. Because they're equidistant. Well, if they're not equidistant, then you can't use that rule. It doesn't change the theory any.
Instead of a single slit, you can understand
I wish you understood. Stop telling us what we understand and don't understand when it's you who doesn't understand anything.
4 surfaces now. So the single slit is really the 2-surface experiment.
That gives a different answer than Gary predicts.
2 sources of scatter.
Is that why?
Okay, so he hasn't touched the real subject, which is Dr. Lincoln produced a video implying that 2 waves create the double slit pattern. Is there any evidence demonstrating that's true? Will he answer this point? No. He's such a coward.
We call you a scatterbrain.
2 sources. This is really the 4-surface experiment. And all you're really doing is saying these 2 outside surfaces, a lot of wavelengths fit inside them.
Oh, nobody ever realised that. Yes, they fucking did. They've known for over 100 years, you prick.
That mean,
Okay, so show me that. So he's saying they know something for over 100 years. Show me what they knew. Because all I see them doing is misrepresenting every single detail. They can't get a single detail right. So show me them doing anything right 100 years ago.
in small nodes, these 2 interior surfaces have a short distance. That means they're going to create the envelope, the big pattern.
Exactly what I was trying to tell you last May the 3rd when you deleted my message saying it was dopey and irrelevant. It wasn't dopey and irrelevant.
Okay, so again, more horseshit. All right, so where's the evidence that I ever read your stupid comment? Where's your evidence of when you just provide the date, and we'll just sit there and show the video where previous to that date I already knew this. Okay, that you didn't provide any new information. I was already asserting it.
Relevant, was it? It was you who was dopey and irrelevant, and still is.
And where you can line up 3 or 4 of these vectors, where you're in phase with these 4 sources, that's where you're going to write.
3 or 4, make your mind up in other versions of this.
So he doesn't think it's 4 sources that are creating the pattern. Again, so that's just because he doesn't know anything about mathematics. Obviously, there's no way to draw the vectors with just 2 vectors and create both patterns. But with 4 sources, you can do it, as just I showed. And how I showed where 5 sources or 6 sources, you're just putting the sources on top of each other. And you're just waiting for all of them to line up again. And then you'll have a bright where they all line up again. When they're all making a in-phase contribution, you have a bright. When they're not all making an in-phase contribution, you have nothing.
So you say you have to have all 4, but 2's not good enough, 3's not good enough, it has to be all 4. If you do that, you don't get the pattern.
There is no destructive interference, there's no real experiment.
All right, so if you do that, you don't get the pattern, he says. So where does he show us evidence that this doesn't work? Oh, that's right, he didn't.
Where they ever showed any light spot getting dark.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. That's taking the line too far. Even I've done it. Mindless Marvels has done it. Loads of people.
Okay, so go ahead, show me it. What do you mean you've done it? And again, I have modified that statement just because, yeah, it's the jamming argument. So, yeah, you can jam the photon by adding another source. You'll break a photon that you made. You made a photon by being in phase, then you added out of phase and broke the ones that you made. Yeah, I realize that is possible. But to say you've done the experiment in any kind of way where anybody could see it, so you show me where this Mindless Marbles did a good example of the experiment. So go ahead and show it. As I recall, he did a slit experiment that was like 5 inches wide out of cardboard. I think that's what he did.
Have done it because it's a very, very, very easy experiment to do.
So why don't you show us?
I've recorded it and I've taken into account
Good, let's see it.
all your excuses as to why it's an optical illusion,
Please, let's see it.
you think. And so I prevented the optical illusion by blanking out.
Please, let's see it. So there's a comment on the video like 5 days ago where somebody brought this up and I made this exact point that, yeah, maybe you're right. So I read it in the video at least 5 days ago. Let's see how many days ago it was. Mark, yeah, this is it. 1 week ago. So 1 week ago, I read this comment. The disappearing photon, adding the additional surfaces by opening up the second slit, could alter the vectors of the in-phase broken photon. Right, so the made photon is now being unmade by the noise being introduced from the new open slit. And he said deflecting them out of phase. There's no deflection, you're just jamming the signal again. You're putting 2 frequencies out of phase in the same location, and it's breaking rather than making. the frequency. And then he says, do I win a Nobel Prize? And I said, well, frankly, that was more insight than anybody's typed on any of these videos. That's certainly more insight than anything Stephen Bro has contributed. So yeah, I would argue that it's smarter than anything Richard Feynman ever said on the subject. It's certainly smarter than anything Mr. Lincoln said on the subject. So yeah, you get my vote. Because that was really smart for you to think of. So that happened a week ago. So why is this crap in Stephen's video? Who knows? Because it's part of his bullshit, that's why. I think this is it. So let's get this done already. Sorry, I didn't realize it'd go this long. I mean, see, it's just too hard to ignore the constant lies. You know, it's just a constant barrage of lies. So he showed nothing in this video. No physics at all. Didn't draw anything, didn't show anything, didn't explain anything. Just a litany of crap.
The parts that you said are giving that impression, the 4 times brightness alongside it, I blank that off so we can look at just the parts that go dark and compare them A-B with both slits open or one slit open. And you were wrong, Gary. This experiment has been done time and time again. It must have been done 1,000,000 times. That's how common this experiment must be.
Well, show me. Post me to a link. Post me to a link then. What is so? If it's done 1,000,000 times, post me to a good link of it being done. Show me. I would have been really interested to see it a year ago. Like I said, now I have my doubts whether it means anything, whether it's true or not true. But the fact is, I've been searching for this experiment for years. Why don't you show it to me if it's been done? Veritasium didn't even do this experiment. You know, yeah. The only one I could find was the one Farley linked me to by the Christian. Okay, the Christian scientist. Okay, and I pointed out why that was horseshit because he had a damn filter on.
Shame on you. Shame on you for being such a lazy prick. No excuses, other than that you were a lazy thick bastard.
So again, it's hilarious. So, you know, again, so what's the point, right? What's the point of talking about this? Stephen Bro is this brilliant guy who can do this experiment where he can show the light disappearing.
That is the current point. Like I open the slit, a certain amount of light hits the surface. No experiment never shown that if I open the slit, more light hits someplace. You know, like someplace that was dark, and someplace that was light gets dark.
You got there in the end.
There's no experiment showing that.
Oh, just grow up. That's a preposterous lie. That's just shameful.
So, okay, so where's the evidence? I'm saying there's no evidence because I haven't seen it. I've been asking for it. I haven't seen it. I made videos asking for it. I played Farley's clip that he sent me. You know, and pointed out the obvious, which is he's got a canceling filter on, which I explained how the canceling filter works, that the more photons you shoot, the more it cancels them out because they're showing up at the same time. You know, so it's canceling the photons, which means, yeah, that's why it disappeared, is because now you're canceling it because there's more photons. The more photons you send, the more it cancels. That's how the filter works. Because it's a filter to stop there from being more than one photon in the experiment at a time. So it's canceling all the ones that don't look like one photon at a time. And those just happen to be the ones that were making the frickin' thing visible.
Laughable. Beneath even you. Why would you lie about something so simple? I can understand you saying that there's been no detector experiment. How they went through that and said you couldn't find evidence of it either, so good reason to suspect that that part is true. But
so then why don't you say that's rather significant, that all these people are talking about detector experiments, but yet there's no evidence they ever was conducted? Why aren't you ragging about that? This falsehood been projected for decades by these physics teachers. Why are you calling them brilliant and admirable when they've been saying things that preposterously inaccurate about something so fundamental and elemental to the physics? It's elementally important whether or not these things they say are true, whether this lie is real or not.
fair enough, but not this. I thought they were saying, you're talking crap, Gary. Any of us can do this within a few minutes of making the effort. It doesn't require any precision. It's very...
Alright, so I'm sure it's going to be ugly as fuck. Stephen Bro at his best.
Very, very easy to block up one slit. Move an object into the way of the slit, and it changes from a single slit pattern to a double slit pattern. Other way around, actually, in that instance, I got mixed up.
Oh, gee, so he just said that. I just did that in the video, right? And he had to point it out, right? You know, you're just hilarious. You're so duplicitous, such a hypocrite. You know, it's just so silly of you to have that kind of error in your video. You know, you just, when you do exactly the thing you're mocking somebody else for doing or pointing out, you know what kind of asshole that makes you? I mean, it's like you're accusing somebody of having smelly feet and you smell even more. You're just being such an asshole.
Single slit pattern, you can mark a place where it's light, unblock the slit, so it's back to a double slit pattern, and a place that was previously bright has gone dark. Then you can isolate that. You can zoom in, you can blow it up.
You can't do any of that because as soon as you move another surface in, you're moving another surface in, you fucking idiot. You can't block it with your hand or anything because it's another surface in the experiment. I mean, too stupid. You have to actually block it at the slit. You can't do it out here somewhere because then this surface becomes part of the experiment. Fuck.
Do whatever you want. Really focus in on that part. Do everything you can to make sure you're only looking at that little spot and then block it up again so it's back to a single slit and it goes bright again. Undo it and move the object out of the way so it's back to the two slit. It goes dark again. So interference does actually happen in the space between the...
All right, so let's just understand. That's how he's defending this. An experiment that's really bad. I mean, just obviously bad. You're doing an experiment out surfaces and then you introduce another surface and then say it's fundamentally the same experiment. Just ignore this extra surface I've put in the experiment. Yeah, that didn't really happen. That's not significant. Yeah, it is.
The screen and the slits. Now, that factor doesn't suit me any more than it suits you, Gary, because when Mindless Marbles pointed out that this is absolutely catastrophic for the surface theory, I was backing you up on this surface theory at first. When Mindless Marbles pointed out and I thought about it, I realised, yes, he's right. The only explanation is that the interference is happening after the slits, between the slits and the wall. The very thing you say is impossible.
Well, whatever. So obviously that's not what's happening, so he's just too stupid to realize introducing another surface, okay, is just fundamentally changing how the light from both of the slits is going to interact with that new surface. You haven't covered the slit by moving something. You don't block the slit by moving your hand in front of it out here. Okay, the whole point is light is being deflected by the surfaces, you idiot. Shit.
Oh, again, it turns out you were wrong. Now, isn't that a surprise?
All right, so there's no evidence, nothing. There's nothing I'm wrong about, blah, blah, blah. And I've already pointed out that theoretically you can destroy photons just as easy as you can make them in this break them and remake them theory. So yes, you can remake a photon and then you can send signal that jams that photon. Yes.
Did that happen? Could it be that Gary is a third cunt? It's just possible. In fact, it's very possible. All the evidence is there.
So this is what people who are interested in science and fact-finding and trialing, testing theory and, discovery and... this is what they want to hear. This is the kind of video they want. Kazoo music. Fuck. So that's about antenna polarization, I think, but I'm not sure. So again, it's just a big joke to this asshole. This has nothing to do with the truth or physics, and the duplicitousness of him is so obvious. The many errors he keeps saying, he's attacking the conventional physics more than my physics even. The assertions he's making about what they're saying, his evidence contradicts what they're saying, not just me. And he's pretending that's not part of the story here, when that is the story. Again, he won't play the Professor Lewin, where Professor Lewin is clearly saying, you can't fuck with kinetic energy. I mean, you can't fuck with momentum. Kinetic energy, yeah, who cares? Whatever. but nature doesn't provide any mechanism for destroying kinetic energy. Will he play that and explain what his theory is, why Professor Lewins is somehow wrong? No. He proved him wrong, but he won't explain why. He won't say it to him. He won't do anything to indicate he's changed physics forever with his new theory. Yeah. So, yeah, no point. But anyway. Yeah, so I'll read comments in another video. I'll let some more absolute slanderous bullshit pile up in here. It really is just, these people are so foul. You know, their inability to make anything reasonable as an argument. It's just a litany of lie after lie after lie, and you know, just insane invasions of my, you know, personal life. Just amazing. The pettiness. For what? I mean, what is this? What is this scandalous thing taking place here? You know, to challenge bent space as a, well, horribly incomplete theory, frankly. Quantum mechanics, which is just full of all kinds of magical stuff. I mean, so apparently they have a tremendous devotion to all these magical ideas that photons are reading our mind, and they're really little spiritual gods, and they're really controlling our lives. We're not controlling the photons are controlling us. Ooh. Yeah. I mean, it's just too silly. You know, I mean, and then the kinetic energy thing is just so hard. The history is so bad. Leibniz being obviously religiously aggressive, shoving the religion right up physics's butt. Just big, giant effort to shove a big religious dildo up science's butt. And then resurrecting that nonsense with clay experiments, and then saying that's all the proof we need. You know, and then just declaring these facts. It takes 4 times more gasoline to go 60 miles an hour than it takes to go 30 miles an hour. But they never proved it. You know, the 10-ton train lost half its energy than the 5-ton train going twice as fast. Show me it being that weak. You know, why don't you tie a little tug of war rope, you know, a little tug of war? Tie a little tug of war rope between the 2 trains and see what happens. See if the 5-ton train wins. I don't think so. I mean, it would be that simple, right? Maybe that's a good way to do one of these experiments, is let the 2 carts go off. Let the twice as massive, half as fast cart go that way, and then twice as fast, half as massive car go the other way, and have a string tied to them, and let the string stop, and see if the faster car makes the heavier car go its way, because it's twice as energetic. Ooh, I thought of an experiment that's fairly simple. This should be doable. Yeah, maybe. I have to think of some way to make it out of just swinging things on a pendulum, maybe. Yes. Should work. Equal energy source. And then just let the string stop both of them from moving. And we'll basically be weighing them. You know, which one has more momentum. Yeah. Because we already know they have the same momentum, right? And they have the same energy. Because momentum is energy. And there's no other logical way to understand it, frankly. There really isn't. See, I mean, they really do think the guy who weighs half as much, but he pulls twice as fast on the tail rope, that somehow he has more capacity to do work. No, he doesn't. Oh, yeah, I really want to get back to that subject because, gee, it's just so stupid. I mean, this other stuff is stupid, but that one's so obviously stupid because the history is so bad. They just don't have a single piece of experimental evidence. I mean, it's really miraculous when you think about it, that they have a whole theory and they can't just say, watch this video, it proves it. There's just no evidence of it. No 8-pound bowling ball knocking down twice as many pins. There's just not a single, they can't show you one single experiment demonstrating, the fact that velocity squares, squaring, having velocity means you have more energy. More velocity is more important than mass. No experiment showing something less massive with more velocity doing actually more work. It really is just, I'm just saying, I'm sure like you, like me, none of you ever paid any attention, right? You didn't pay attention to the history. You just saw the formula, said, okay, they figured out a formula. That's what I did. I always thought it was just weird, though. You looked at it and you said, what the fuck? Why is this so complicated? And it seems kind of complicating, having to square the velocity to figure out how much work it could do. Yeah, it doesn't seem to make any sense on its surface. And my brain just always said, well, momentum, is somehow different. Just let that slide. But it really shouldn't have. And once I read the history, it's like, you're just like, it's so glaring. Nobody should ever let this slide. This was just such a pile of crap as a theory. There's no experimental evidence. I mean, it's just, there's no experimental evidence. None. Anyway, all right. Till the next time and such. I mean, it's so, you're just saying. It's like the whole Newton, and they never dropped a Newton. They never dropped 100 grams. They never dropped it 1 meter and weighed how much impact it made. Just weigh the impact. They never did it. Because that's a joule. So you can know exactly how much a joule weighs by just dropping a Newton, 100 grams, 1 meter. And you know how much a joule weighs. They never did it. What? I mean, it's, yeah. Sorry. This is all beyond credulity. You're just saying this isn't credible logic. What you people are doing on this planet is not doing logic. You're fucked in the head. Because it doesn't make any sense. Alright, anyway. So, till the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot. Yeah. So, yeah, there's no point in playing Steven's videos, right? Until he shows some kind of video. When he makes a video where he just does experiments, then I'll watch it. But otherwise, fuck this, right? This was just such a waste of time. This video had nothing in it. The other video had shit in it. Just shitty evidence. Shitty experiment, shittily filmed, shittily provided us this evidence that he changed how many nodes there are. It was shit. And, this is way too much time to waste on shit assertions by a shit head. So anyway, this has been a draft physics video presentation. Until the next time and such, and so forth and whatnot.